Hello, in this video, I'm going to talk about lymph nodes. So lymph nodes are these small bean-shaped organs that are all throughout the whole body. There's about 600 in an average person. They're spread everywhere, although there are collections with they're more concentrated. There's collections of them at the larger joints. So there are many in the axillary area, in the inguinal area, behind the knee, up at the neck. So they tend to be more concentrated around the joints. So lymph nodes act as little filters. If you watched the previous video where I talked about where lymph comes from and about capillary exchange, we know that lymph is full of waste products secreted by the cells. So we want to filter that out. And also, if there are any pathogens, any viruses, bacteria, anything that gets into that interstitial space in the tissues, and then gets taken up as lymph, we want to filter that out before the lymph eventually is returned back into our blood circulation. So these lymph nodes are little filters, and all of the lymph that's collected up into these lymphatic vessels goes through several lymph nodes as it's traveling on its path back ultimately towards the heart. Then eventually, after the lymph has gone through several lymph nodes for filtering, then that lymph is returned back into the blood supply. It's emptied into the internal jugulars and the subclavian veins right before the blood goes back into the heart to then be oxygenated again and then circulated throughout the body. So inside of a lymph node, so let's talk about what is actually happening in the lymph node. So inside a lymph node, there are regions that are populated with colonies of all sorts of different white blood cells. So B cells, T cells, dendritic cells, phagocytes, so all sorts of different cells whose job is going to be different depending on the type of cell. But ultimately, they're all there to combat any kind of pathogen or phagocytes, macrophages there to consume different debris or things that we don't want to return back into our blood circulation. So lymph enters in through afferent vessels and exits through efferent vessels. So throughout anatomy, you'll hear those words afferent and efferent. Afferent means that it's something going toward whatever the thing is that we're talking about, efferent going away from. So most commonly, you'll hear that with the nervous system, afferent being sensory commands or sensory information coming up from the periphery towards the central nervous system, and efferent being motor commands going away from the central nervous system. So here we're using those terms afferent to mean the vessels leading into the lymph node, and efferent meaning the vessels that are exiting the lymph node. Now, there are more afferent vessels than there are efferent. What that does is causes there to be pressure of that fluid inside the lymph node. So there is more space and more vessels allowing fluid to go into the lymph node and a much smaller exit for that fluid. And that's made sure of by valves. So valves are making sure that the fluid is only going in the right direction. So the fluid is going in through more afferent vessels. Then there's a lot of pressure inside of the lymph node, which makes it a sort of pressurized filter. It forces that fluid to interact with as many of the cells inside the lymph node as possible so that it's a very thorough and effective filtering event. And then that fluid exits through the efferent vessel on the opposite side after it's hopefully been, after that fluid has interacted with lots of cells and those cells had the opportunity to destroy whatever was there that we don't want to continue. So immune responses occur here, and foreign particles are trapped and phagocytized, meaning they're dissolved or digested by cells. So the lymph goes through several of these filtering events in lymph nodes before the lymph is finally poured back into the blood circulation. All right, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.